Well, the legislative session here in the Commonwealth of Virginia is over. It's sine die. That means that the laws are in the books, but not quite just yet. The governor has until the middle of next month in order to sign bills, veto them, leave them alone and let them become law, or make some changes. And then on the 22nd here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, there's a reconvene session in April where the legislature will come back and deal with the laws that came off the governor's desk. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and you're joining us for our end of our General Assembly 2026 session series. As always, we want to thank you for joining us, as you always do, as we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. Well, listen, if you hear me a little bit sniffle here and there, it's because I'm not sick, but my allergies just doesn't know which season it is. But, you know, we've had some great weather, then we had some snow, then we had some cold, then we had some rain, then we had some tornado warnings, but all is part of, I guess, is part of what's going on here all around the world. But one thing we are grateful for, especially on this day, is that we are alive and well, and that is truly half the battle. Listen, we have had a phenomenal time going through what's happening in this historic session. Of course, we talked about the historic numbers in which the Democrats have in the General Assembly from the previous election, a historic number of Black caucus members and leadership, Black members in leadership, and also historic executive offices. And with all of that, they got down to business. And we see now where some of the laws are coming into effect. They're already signed, and others are waiting on the governor's desk to see exactly what she's going to do. And then based on that, we'll see what the General Assembly does. Well, listen, every year we've had a tradition where we started off our General Assembly legislative session series on Stay the Water with a very good friend of mine who's a major supporter of this institution, and in my opinion and others, a Hall of Fame NSU alum and a phenomenal representative of his district. But we're going to end it with him on this series in 2026. Everyone, please welcome none other than my good friend. You know him. He is one of the great Norfolk State University alums and supporters, none other than Delegate Cliff Hayes Jr. Brother Hayes, how you feel this morning?
We're wonderful, Dr. Claville, and always excited about being with the land of Sparta, whether standing there in front of everybody or over the airways on the Hot 91. You know, listen, it's not coincidental that the Hot 91 radio station on your FM radio dial is exactly the number of my district as well. So I'm thankful to represent the Hot 91st district, representing parts of Chesapeake on the northern end and a small portion of the great city of P-Town, Portsmouth. So we're excited, Dr. Claville, about this closing out the General Assembly session. We know that oftentimes we kick this thing off and we're the leadoff hitter, but every now and then we don't mind being the cleanup.
You know what? Listen, and as a former baseball star yourself, you know the last one at bat is the most important, right?
Yes, sir. The bases are loaded, baby. We got to drive them runs in.
Well, listen, speaking of the bases being loaded, this General Assembly session was historic. You know, I mentioned a few things earlier, but I want to get your perspective of being able to serve. I mean, you saw, you know, the first African-American woman to actually serve in the Virginia House of Delegates and the Virginia Senate, who was none other than Senator Yvonne Miller, the late, great NSU alum and legislator, fighter for our people. You saw her. You were part of You're a part of that legacy in which you are continuing to move at Norfolk State. And now you also see the election and the ascension of the first Black speaker and the election of the first Black attorney general. You know, just from your historical perspective, what did this session mean to you?
It's phenomenal, man, because when you look back on the days of, I think it was the senior year when the campus NAACP went up to the Virginia General Assembly with then President Harrison B. Wilson at the time. And just standing there watching the members of the General Assembly at that time was so inspiring and so rewarding and educating and edifying to just see what this process is all about. So much so that many years later, I ended up actually working for a couple of legislators. I've worked for Delegate Algie Howe, who represented Norfolk State's territory at one time, as well as I worked for Senator Yvonne Miller. So to have the ability to see the members of the Virginia General Assembly, like at that time, a young legislator in the name of L. Louise Lucas, to see Governor-elect L. Douglas Wilder get elected as we knocked on doors for him, to see a great person such as the late, great Gerald Jones get elected after being online even for Omega Lamps we went through the neighborhoods knocking on doors to get him elected. So that was all exciting times to see much of that come to fruition, and then to be at a place where I'm sitting there in the same halls, on the same floor, effecting change is just remarkable. It's exhilarating and satisfying to know that we're able to throw the rope back. Listen, everything that I do in that General Assembly is centered around one mission, and that is to impact communities and to change lives. Now, while making sure that government works for everyday people, especially when it comes to affordability and access, that's what we're all about.
You know, when you talk about affordability and access and what you've been able to do, I also want to acknowledge the work that you've done for Norfolk State University. I mean, you are a true champion, not just in, being a great Spartan, but in your life and your achievement. But going back, when you say throw the road back, listen, the legislation that you've sponsored and supported behind the scenes to get Norfolk State where it is now, when people come on campus, they're like, this is one of the most beautiful campuses I've ever seen. Especially one of the most beautiful HBCU campuses. And I want our listeners to know it's because, in large part, because of who we're talking to right now. Someone who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk when it comes to throwing the road back and supporting his institution and our great Norfolk State. But when
That's what Dr. Dick Price often would say to us all, is when you leave this campus, make sure that you never forget there are a bunch of people that are coming after you. Throw the rope back. And that's what I've tried to do when I sit in a place on general government and capital outlay as the chairperson for the Commonwealth. I can't help but to hear the echoing of his voice. And that's why we do what we do. Hundreds with an S, with a plural, of millions of dollars that I've been able to be a part of bringing to the campus of Norfolk State University. And I'm excited about it. Not only have we done that, but we're not finished yet.
I love to hear that. We're not finished yet. Not finished yet. And speaking of not being finished yet, you mentioned affordability, access, opportunity previously, which was a mantra of the governor's administration coming in. But in not just in word, but there were bills and legislation that was passed because of that. Talk to us a little bit about some of the legislation that you sponsored, either co-sponsored or supported, that was passed that actually exemplify, that mantra of access, affordability, and opportunity.
Yeah, so there were many pieces of legislation that we had a chance to affect this past session, and as you mentioned, affordability was at the top of our agenda. It's so nice to be in a position where we have a governor at the end of our processes who agrees with us that affordability is at the top of the priority list, so that when these bills pass the House and they pass the Senate, it's a great feeling to send them to a governor that we know in large part is going to sign these pieces of legislation, sign the budget bill once we get it finalized and send it to her. Her Excellency does have a nice ring to it. For the first time, the Commonwealth has hired its first female to be the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So thanks to you, the bosses, the people of the Commonwealth and this democracy who wanted to have your voices heard. Thanks to you, the bosses, the people in this democracy who thought it not robbery to hire your first African-American Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia in Jay Jones. And thank God that you all were in the position, passionate enough to have the first Muslim American be elected as the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So when you look at our leadership and you look across and you see the Speaker of the House is a member of the Divine Nine, the first black Speaker of the House over 407 years of a Commonwealth it took. And now we have Don Scott as our Speaker of the House. When you look and you see Norfolk State alum, a member of Divine Nine, that dynamic delta in L. Louise Lucas being the Senate pro temp of the Senate as well as the chair of Senate Finance. When you see me, a member of the Divine Nine, Norfolk State alum, sitting as the chair of capital outlay and general government on appropriations in the House, how can we not be excited about the fact that we can look over this campus and make you want to do backflips? For the wonderful time that we have now, my former, and I'm proud to say former, my former seatmate on the House floor, also a Spartan alum, Candy Munden King, is now the Secretary of the Commonwealth. Spartans doing some amazing stuff, man. Spartans are doing some amazing things.
You mentioned that, and it's amazing because, we're constantly telling that story. Another fact that a lot of people probably don't know is that Norfolk State has more legislators as alums in the General Assembly than any other HBCU in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Wow, hadn't stopped to think about it, but that is quite recognizable as well as worthy of recognition. Sometimes we become numb to these things and we think that some of these achievements are normal. The truth is, there's nothing normal about this exciting time that we live in right now here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have the Governor, Abigail Spanberger, Attorney General Jay Jones, as well as Ghazala Hashmi as our Lieutenant Governor. These are exciting times.
Absolutely exciting times. And again, when we talk about a few bills, give us a couple of bills that you passed, like I said, and just whether it is with the mantra or of affordability, access, and opportunity, or that benefited your district.
Yeah, I'll just start with something that Senator Mamie Locke and I led for the past three or four sessions of the General Assembly, and the Black Caucus certainly had it at the top of its list, as well as the Momnibus bill and legislation coming out of last year, rolling right into this year, and that is unconscious bias in the medical professions. Dr. Claville, all kind of statistics show that there really is a problem when it comes to healthcare and the application of healthcare when it comes to race, and that blacks die and go through unnecessary pain because of unconscious bias that is taught in some of the medical schools, some of the best medical schools here in the Commonwealth. And so what we're saying is that everybody needs to be trained in order to get your medical license, and then in order for you to renew, you need to be trained on unconscious bias. That bill, unfortunately, over the past few sessions, would pass the House, pass the Senate, only to be vetoed by then the governor, Governor Youngkin. Well, again, I can say one more time, third time's a charm. We are overjoyed that that bill has passed the House, passed the Senate, and now has been sent over to Governor Abigail Spanberger, who we are standing on the tiptoes of anticipation, waiting for her to ink the deal and sign those bills, Senator Locke's bill and mine, saying that unconscious bias ought to be taught in our schools, so medical schools. And so we're excited about that one. Also, you may notice when you drive around town, you see these cameras that you end up getting a ticket or a summons sent to you in the mail because you were speeding or you did a rolling stop at an intersection instead of stopping all the way. These things, yes, need to be enforced. However, it's not up to, and we should not leave it up to the final say of technology, right? So it shouldn't be that the camera takes a picture of you and then automatically generates a ticket and it's shipped to your address because there needs to be a human in the loop. And so this session, I've sponsored legislation to say that you don't automatically just send a ticket out to somebody. There must be a human in the loop that verifies who this is, verifies the plate on the vehicle, et cetera, because I can have, as I do, a 27 on my license plate, but guess what? There's a 27 for a senator, a Senate plate. There's a 27 if Eric Claville wants to just tell the ask DMV to provide him license plate number 27. There's a 27 for some commissioner of revenue somewhere in the Commonwealth. So for that process to go unchecked is unnecessary. We need to make sure that these bits of technology that we're using are checked and make sure that they're actually tagging folk in a proper way as opposed to erroneously listing you as someone who has broken the law. Also, we have a few pieces of legislation around sickle cell. The unfortunate circumstance of last summer was my seatmate then, now Secretary of the Commonwealth, Candy Munden King, lost her precious baby, Candace Patrice, to sickle cell complications just this past summer. So we came back to the General Assembly this session trying to make sure that any and everybody understands what sickle cell disease actually is. The challenge has been that when our sickle cell patients show up with a sickle cell crisis at many of our hospitals across the Commonwealth, those emergency rooms do not and did not understand what sickle cell disease actually was. And so many of those with sickle cell or experiencing a sickle cell crises, when they showed up at the emergency room, only to be have folks perplexed about what to do and deny them service that they need, they would travel all the way to Richmond to VCU, where Dr. Smith is, who's an expert and a leading person in the medical profession on sickle cell there at VCU Hospital, would treat folks and teach them all about sickle cell. The problem is he can't be everywhere, right? So there's legislation in this session that passed and in our budget to create a sickle cell network so that no matter where you are as a hospital, you can be connected to VCU's specialized area around sickle cell and help explain to those hospitals around the Commonwealth in real time what to do under a sickle cell crisis. Also, we found that there are a number of athletes who have suffered and some died because they had the sickle cell trait. And some of the problems with that is that they're hidden symptoms that may seem normal that have turned deadly to some of our athletes. And so we're going to require that all of our high schools now have information and knowledge around sickle cell, every coach in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And then there are a few other sickle cell bills that have passed as well. So we're just excited that the word is out on sickle cell anemia as well. And then across the Commonwealth, there are these illegal machines. Let me say that again, illegal machines of chance. They look like turn the convenience stores into many casinos.
Right.
90,000 of those machines here in the Commonwealth, everywhere. And it's not regulated at all. And what has happened is our lottery proceeds that normally go towards education, those numbers have been declining and going down because people are choosing to play those games. Well, we have to be smart enough to adjust and agile enough to adjust to the times. So if those illegal machines, 90,000 of them all across the Commonwealth, people are playing them and using them, and they haven't been approved here in the Commonwealth, we need to have our law be so that we can regulate those machines. And so instead of them being illegal machines, we have what we call skill games, where you actually can improve your chances with your skill to have 25,000 of those machines limited and capped. And in each convenience store will be limited to 3 of those machines, restaurants 4, the truck stops 7, and any charitable locations 2. And what that's going to do is generate a total of $370 to $390 million for the Commonwealth of Virginia to be able to garner that money that's lost for education. We're going to drive that money towards education and fill that hole, if you will, that gap that has existed where the lottery scratch-offs have declined. Senator Aaron Rouse carried that bill on the Senate side, and I carried it on the House side to try to straighten out that situation. And when it comes to technology, as you know, in this time, day and time, AI and all other kinds of things are going on, and the criminals, the bad folk know how to use technology just like the good folks. But the question is, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to just sit back and watch things happen in such a way that we, our people of the Commonwealth, are bamboozled? We should not. We should not. And so what we're doing now is putting forth legislation to deal with deep fakes, if you will, is what it's called, deep fakes, and dealing with types of technology that might cause folks to be fooled in terms of the technology that comes before them. So we have that legislation before us. We even had a bill to require government entities to either have a .gov domain or a .edu for education. That way, our citizens begin to understand and know what to look for. Right now, we have city localities, governments with .org and .com and .net. We have schools with .coms and .orgs and .net. So the people don't know the difference between what's real and what's fake.
Right.
So it's our hope that moving forward, we'll figure out the fact that if we go to .gov and .edu as a requirement, then the Commonwealth can help its citizens as well. So
Awesome.
We'll be dealing with that one as well.
Awesome. You know, there's great legislation, again, moving the needle in order to help our citizens basically be better here in the Commonwealth and not be taken advantage of. Hats off to you for sponsoring. And I know that's just a small part of the legislation that you sponsored. But I want to talk about something in the last segment here, last 3 minutes. And we're going to have you back for this one because this is the one that is most timely. The referendum for the redrawing of the congressional districts. Some call it, when they see the word gerrymander, of course, that has a bad connotation, especially to African Americans, when we take a look at us being not just minimized, but not even being able to participate in voting. But this particular referendum is different because what it's doing is leveling the playing field that was unleveled by our sitting president and other conservatives at the behest of our president and other conservative states. So with that, talk to us a little bit about this referendum that is early voting starting now, but the last day to vote is April 22nd before the reconvened session of the legislature on the 22nd.
If you listen to nothing else that I've said on this broadcast, I need you to listen to this. Vote yes. That's it. Vote yes. Yes, 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 vote yes. Vote yes that you want the Commonwealth to have the ability to level the playing field. That's it. Vote yes to give the I don't care whose picture is sitting beside the message. Vote yes. If the person looks like you and they're telling you to do something other than yes, don't listen to it because all skin folk aren't kinfolk. You need to make sure that you vote yes. Vote yes, and don't listen to the text out of context, becoming a pretext to con people. That's all it is. A text out of context becomes the pretext to con folk, and that's where you will see a misrepresentation of what to do under this referendum. And so make sure you vote yes. Vote yes, vote yes, vote yes, vote yes.
You know, it was pretty easy, but this referendum is very important, and there's a lot of mixed messaging out there. We were talking earlier about mixed messaging, and you gave a quote, and I want you to give it here to our listeners and tell us why it's so important in order to not believe everything you read.
Yeah, as I said before, a text out of context becomes the pretext to con people. What happens is you have these individuals out there trying to trick us up, trying to bamboozle us. So they'll take a message and put it in a different context other than the truth and leave you wondering if you should follow that message or follow those instructions. But again, we're smarter than that. We understand, we can read between the lines that text out of context becomes the pretext to con people.
Well, listen, you heard it here on Stay in the Water, and you put it perfectly. But like I said, we're going to have you back because this is something that is timely. We've got pretty much right now about less than a month, less than 30 days before the voting ends on this on April 21st, the first constitutional referendum. But my good friend, I want to thank you so much for joining us to end this General Assembly session, this series that we do here on State of Water every year. But again, no stranger to the station, no stranger to this university, no stranger to Hampton Roads and the Commonwealth of Virginia as a legislator. And once again, thank you for being the Spartan that you are. And again, I want to thank all of you for joining us, as you always do. And until next time, be good, be great. God bless.
And we'll be whole.
The green and gold. We'll see you next week.
There you go.
God bless.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.